Welcome to Travel Chicks, where we talk travel, transformation, and inspiration. My name's Melissa. I'm the founder of Travel Chicks, and I want to let you know that it may be me, it may be one of our other travel chicks, but welcome on board this adventure. Please, if you love what you hear, like it. Leave a review and share this with your friends. We need to inspire more people to create their own travel story. So today it's kind of exciting because we're seeing a trend in travel. And of course, we had to share it with you to bring you updated information. And as you know, all of this stuff is changing all the time, especially when it comes to COVID and regulations and acceptances and protocols. And so today we're talking all about cruises. There is a really helpful article that I will share in the show notes below. So if you'd like that, just click the link in the show notes. But today we're talking all about cruises and the COVID regulations that have been lifted, and we're starting to see a trend with many cruise lines. So you might want to grab a notebook, take some notes, and let's begin. Back in July 18th, 2022, CDC made an announcement, and that was regarding all of the Covid-19 program for cruise ships. It is no longer in effect, and it will no longer update pages that tracked cases on board the ships. You know, it was a milestone in the summer, especially for the cruise industry, because thousands, if not millions of passengers every single year, especially Canadians, board a cruise ship. So I am here today to talk about I would say not all of the cruise lines, but the majority of the popular booking cruise lines that we see here in Canada. So you might want to take a pen out. And here we are. And please keep in mind that these can change at any time. So as of right now, Monday, August 22nd, we're going to roll through the updated cruise line vaccination requirements, if any. Okay, so let's start with AMA Waterways. Vaccinations are required for all guests. A small number of exemptions are available, but they must be applied for. Boosters. So many people have been asking about booster shots. Booster requirements vary by the specific itinerary. For instance, guests sailing on or visiting the Netherlands or Luxembourg must have had a booster shot if their second shot was more than 270 days prior to sailing. And then for the testing for AMA Waterways, vaccinated guests visiting Spain and France who have not had a booster dose must present a negative COVID-19 test in order to enter the country and board their river ship. Guests exempted from the vaccine must show proof of a negative PCR or antigen test taken no more than 48 hours prior to the embarkation of the cruise. So I have a client right now who is going to be flying from Paris to Barcelona, Spain to board a 7-day cruise. And there is a lot of information out there that's confusing, but I actually spoke with the Spain Tourism Board here in Canada just this week, and they confirmed that if the client is fully vaccinated and they do not have a booster, or their second dose of vaccine was more than 270 days old, because I have a lot of clients right now who refuse to get the booster, but they have been double vaxxed. So her situation, she is allowed to board the ship as long as she provides proof of a COVID test. Okay. Now, another popular cruise line that we book is Carnival Cruise Lines. So here, their vaccinations are required for all guests age 12 and older through September 5th, 2022. For cruises departing September 6th and after, unvaccinated guests are welcome on the sailings of less than 16 nights without applying for an exemption. with the exception of cruises in Australia. So from now until September 5th, vaccine exemptions are very limited to a small number of guests. And they are capacity controlled based on the total number of vaccinated guests projected to be on board. Exemptions must be applied for. On Panama Canal cruises of 16 days or longer, vaccine exemptions will not be granted for minors under 12, okay? Boosters for Carnival Cruise Lines, they're not required except on 2022 departures of Carnival Pride and Carnival Celebration in Europe. And on the September 6, 23-day Trans-Pacific sailing of Carnival Splendor, okay? Testing. From now until September 5th, there is no pre-cruise testing requirement for fully vaxxed guests on cruises with itineraries of 5 days or less. After September 6th, pre-cruise testing is no longer required on any sailing for fully vaccinated guests, except on cruises to Canada, Bermuda, Greece, and Australia. Okay? All unvaccinated guests or anyone who does not show proof of vaccination must provide proof of a negative COVID, PCR test, or antigen test taken within 3 days of embarkation. Okay. Children younger than 5, they are exempt from vaccine and testing requirements in the US. Okay. So that's Carnival Cruise Lines. Celebrity cruises, vaccinations are required for all guests age 12 and older until September 5th. So you'll notice here that after September 6th, a lot of these things for requiring proof of vaccination is going to be gone, which is great news for many people who have expressed interest in wanting to travel and simply cannot do so right now. So for celebrity cruises, September 6th, all travelers, regardless of vaccination status, may cruise on the following itineraries as long as they meet testing requirements to board. So all sailings departing from the UK or Europe, except for Iceland, and all sailings departing from Los Angeles. Boosters, not required. Okay. Vaccinated guests on sailings of 6 nights or longer must continue to present proof of a negative PCR or antigen COVID-19 test taken within 2 days of boarding their ship. All unvaccinated guests aged 2 and older also must present the negative COVID test. Okay. Another cruise line that we are going to be discussing is the Norwegian. And for Norwegian, starting September 3rd, vaccinations are only required for cruises visiting destinations that require it, like our lovely country of Canada, Bermuda, and Greece. And guests aged 11 and under will not be subject to vaccination or testing protocols of any kind. Now, Norwegian boosters on sailings that require vaccinations, vaccinated guests must meet the definition of fully vaccinated based on the destination they are embarking or traveling to. And of course, it must provide proof of vaccination. Now, here's the thing. I mentioned that 270 days for the booster or the second dose of vaccine is considered up to date with vaccinations over in Europe. So it really depends, and this is a great thing to talk to your travel agent about, is what country are you going to and what are their protocols, okay? Now for Norwegian, starting September 3rd, testing is not going to be required for vaccinated guests of any age. Now with unvaccinated guests, age 12 and older, or those who cannot or decline to provide proof of vaccine, they will need to present a negative PCR or antigen COVID test. So, I mean, you guys can see that this is kind of coming down the pipeline after the benchmark really for most cruise lines right now is September 6th. There will be no more testing on board for fully vaccinated folks. Princess Cruises. Vaccinations required for all guests age 12 and older through to September 5th. And then, of course, starting on September 6th, all guests are welcome on board regardless of their vax status, except on voyages of 16 days or longer, or that visit countries where mandates are still in place, like Greece, okay? Now, Princess Cruises boosters, they are only for cruises departing from Europe. A booster dose is required for anyone over 18 if the last dose of the primary vaccine series was more than 270 days prior to the date of disembarkation, okay? Testing on board, again, through till September 5th, all guests age 5 and older require proof of a negative COVID test. But starting September 6th, vaccinated guests will no longer have to test before their cruise, except on voyages of 16 days or longer. Unvaccinated guests age 5 and older are those who do not provide proof of vaccination status before their cruise will need to upload a proof of a negative COVID test taken within 3 days of sailing. And then in Europe, for princess itineraries, children under 5 are not required to take a pre-COVID test. Okay, so that is Princess. Another hot cruise line that we book a lot of is Royal Caribbean. So vaccinations are required right now for all guests age 12 and older. Their deadline is September 4th, okay? So starting with sailings after September 5th, all guests, regardless of their vax status, are welcome on board for cruises from LA, Galveston, New Orleans, and a lot of European home ports. However, all guests 12 and older, they must show proof of full vaccination to go ashore in the Grand Cayman Islands. Now, for Royal Caribbean booster shots, they are not required except on some European cruises for which a booster is required. And again, we would direct you to speak with your travel agent about that. Testing not required for vaccinated guests on any US-based cruises of 5 days or less, okay? On sailings of 6 nights or longer, all guests aged 2 and up must provide a negative PCR or antigen COVID-19 test before boarding. All right. Now, on sailings of any length, unvaccinated kids aged 2 to 11 must show a negative test result for a PCR test. So that's not the antigen. And it has to be taken no more than 3 days before boarding the ship. And it must not be taken on the embarkation day. They will also need to take an antigen test at the terminal as well as an antigen test before their cruise ends. Okay. So that is a lot of information for you to take in. If you do have any questions, please shoot us an email at info@travelchicks.ca. We'd be more than happy to help you. And if you found this valuable, please don't forget to hit subscribe and write a review. We are really amping up the podcast and we want more people to hear the information as it comes live to us. So once again, thanks for tuning in and we will talk to you very soon.